Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder, the place where we try to make sense of what is really going on behind the big corporate numbers. And boy do we have a doozy today, because what we're about to uncover is a company that has been living on the edge of a healthcare cliff, and now they're getting bought out. Stick around to decode this tale. Before we dive in, if you appreciate getting straight insights from corporate documents and want to stay ahead of the curve, make sure you are subscribed. We also have a super active Discord community linked in the description below, where you can connect with fellow viewers and get even more exclusive content. Alright, let's jump right into the heart of this filing, which is Amicus Therapeutics, Inc.'s financial story for the year that ended the 31st of December 2025. We are looking at their financial health like a doctor checking a patient's vital signs. First, their assets, which are all the good stuff they own. Their total assets at the end of 2025 were just shy of $1 billion, reaching $949.9 million. That is a pretty healthy jump from the $785 million they had at the end of 2024. Most of this increase came from a significant boost in their current assets. Specifically, their inventories nearly doubled from $118.8 million in 2024 to $228.8 million in 2025. This usually means they are producing more drugs, expecting to sell them, which is a good sign for sales, but also means they have a lot of money tied up in products that are not yet sold. On the flip side, their liabilities also went up, going from just under $591 million in 2024 to over $675 million in 2025. A big chunk of this increase is in their accounts payable, which grew from about $13 million to almost $29 million. This means they are owing more to their suppliers, which is expected when inventory increases, but it is always something to keep an eye on. Let's talk about what really matters to investors, the income statement. This table shows us how much money the company made or lost. For 2025, Amicus reported net product sales of a whopping $634.2 million. That is a solid increase from $528.3 million in 2024. This growth is largely thanks to their two main drugs, Galafold, which is for Fabry disease, and Pombiliti plus Opfolda for Pompe disease. Their sales are climbing, which is fantastic news. With those rising sales, their gross profit, which is what is left after paying for making the products, also jumped significantly from $475.4 million in 2024 to $561.3 million in 2025. That is a good jump, showing they are managing their production costs well relative to their sales. However, when we look at their operating expenses, things get a bit more complicated. Their research and development costs went up by about $26.5 million, mainly because they made a big upfront payment for a new drug candidate called DMX-200. That is a strategic move, investing in the future, but their selling, general, and administrative expenses really ballooned, increasing by over $60 million. This jump is attributed to higher personnel costs and a surge in legal and professional fees, likely tied to their patent litigation, and crucially, the announcement of the merger with BioMarin. Despite the revenue growth, all these expenses mean that Amicus still reported a net loss. In 2025, this loss was about $27.1 million. While this is better than the $56 million loss in 2024, it still shows that the company is not yet profitable. This is typical for many biotech companies that are investing heavily in research and bringing new drugs to market. Even with a net loss, companies can still be healthy if they have enough cash to operate. Let's see their cash situation. For the year ended the 31st of December 2025, Amicus actually generated positive cash from operations, bringing in about $33.1 million. This is a huge turnaround from the nearly $34 million cash used in operations in 2024. This is fantastic news on the cash flow front. It means their day-to-day business operations are now generating cash. Despite the overall net loss, this improvement is largely due to smart management of their operating assets and liabilities, like a better handle on inventory and paying their bills. However, their investing activities show they used quite a bit of cash, about $46.4 million. This was mainly because they bought more marketable securities. They also spent a good chunk of money, about $51.3 million, selling off some of those securities. On the financing side, they brought in a small amount of cash, just over $500,000, mainly from exercising stock options. Looking at their cash reserves, they had about $293.5 million in cash equivalents, and marketable securities at the end of 2025. This is a decent safety net, especially considering they are in the process of being acquired. Now for the biggest news, which is really the main story here. On the 19th of December 2025, Amicus announced a deal to be bought by BioMarin Pharmaceutical Incorporated. This is a really big development. Under this agreement, BioMarin will buy all of Amicus's stock for $14.50 per S-Hair in cash. This means Amicus will become a part of BioMarin. and its stock will no longer be traded publicly. The companies expect this deal to close in the second quarter of 2026, but it still needs approval from Amicus's stockholders and regulatory bodies. This deal is a huge indicator of the company's situation. It suggests that the board and management believe this is the best path forward, likely to maximize shareholder value given the market conditions and the company's financial outlook. Even with the positive cash flow from operations, it is a way to cash out for investors at a premium. This also explains that huge jump in legal and professional fees we saw earlier. All that M&A activity comes with a hefty price tag for lawyers and advisors. Of course, even with this deal, there are risks. The filing highlights that the merger might not actually happen. If it falls apart, it could hurt Amicus's business and stock price. Plus, while the deal is pending, Amicus is restricted in its business activities, meaning they can't just go out and make big moves without BioMarin's agreement. This could hamper their ability to navigate competitive pressures. Looking at the bigger picture, Amicus is still heavily reliant on the success of their two main drugs, Galafold and Pombiliti plus Opfolda. They've made great progress getting these drugs approved and sold in many countries. Galafold sales alone were over $521 million in 2025, a nice jump from 2024. Pombiliti plus Opfolda is also showing strong growth, bringing in over $112 million in 2025 compared to $70 million in 2024. So their core business is definitely moving in the right direction. But in the biotech world, competition is fierce. Amicus is up against some big players like Sanofi, Takeda, and Cheesy, all vying for the same patients with rare diseases. While they have strong products, the constant threat of new therapies or even generic versions means they can never rest. And then there are the inherent risks of drug development. Any drug, no matter how promising, can face serious side effects that could halt its development or even lead to its withdrawal from the market, even after approval. This is a constant shadow over companies like Amicus. They also freely admit they have limited resources. This means they have to make tough choices about which drug candidates to pursue, and sometimes by focusing on one, they might miss out on another opportunity that could have been even more profitable. It is a high-stakes game of scientific and financial roulette. A quirky financial detail is their net operating loss carryforwards, which are basically tax losses from previous years that can cut future tax bills. Amicus has a massive amount of these, over $1 billion. However, there are complex rules that can limit how much of these losses they can actually use, especially if the company's ownership changes significantly. It is a bit of a hidden financial complexity, so wrapping it all up, Amicus Therapeutics is in an interesting spot. They've got growing sales from their approved drugs, which is fantastic. They've turned a corner on cash flow from operations, which is a huge win for a company in this industry. But they are still operating at a net loss and are subject to the huge risks inherent in drug development and a highly competitive market. The pending acquisition by BioMarin is a massive vote of confidence, and likely a strategic move to capitalize on their successes while mitigating future risks and unlocking value for shareholders. It signals a potential end to their journey as an independent entity, but a potentially very lucrative one for investors. The big question now is whether this deal will go through smoothly. What is your take on this BioMarin acquisition? Does it make sense for Amicus? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit that like button, it really helps the channel, and subscribe for more in-depth corporate analysis. And don't forget to join our Discord community linked in the description to keep the conversation going. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.